Hey there, this is Jennifer. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This process video is for the word of the year and the StencilGirl Products and Marabu collaboration. I am very excited to be one of 10 artists sharing their word of the year project, in my case an art journal spread using StencilGirl Products and Marabu. So I am a StencilGirl creative team member for the 2019-2020 term, and all of the StencilGirl products that I use for the most part are from StencilGirl. They have made this possible, and a big thank you to the folks at Marabu for providing me with a selection of 6 colors of the Marabu mixed media art spray. So I'm working in my small Dylusions journal, and I've laid down a thin layer of watered down DecoArt fluid acrylic, and I have applied it with a wet brush onto a slightly dampened page. So we'll just get this dry, and we will move on to the art sprays. And the art sprays, again, were provided by Marabu, and this is my first time using them, and they are fantastic. You'll notice that here on the video, as I move through using different products, whether it be stencils, paint, art spray, the name of the color and manufacturer will be listed across the screen. So I'm just starting with this yellow green and putting it through the first stencil, and we're just going to build, layering the art sprays with various stencil designs as we go. Now, if you're not familiar with the Marabu art spray, it's a mixed media supply. It is an acrylic based non-aerosol spray that once dry becomes waterproof and permanent. So I have worked with Dylusions ink spray a lot, and I really love the product. The only complaint I would ever have is that working in mixed media and layering wet media over top, as we so often do, would reactivate the ink. And although, I kind of learned how to work around it and with it, these art sprays are just next level. It's really changed the way I'm working in my journal, and I am loving it. So I've used the same stencil twice, and now I am adding a second stencil design. This is a Natalie callback for StencilGirl design. I'm a huge fan of Nat. And if you haven't figured out so far, I think it's probably becoming clear to you that the page I'm putting together is going to be very tribal. This particular stencil is a batik design, and I believe that is the name of the stencil, is batik. But my goal is to have a really sort of graffiti-esque, funky kind of tribal spread. You'll notice as I add each layer of color, I'm taking the time to dry what I've put down, and that is just because I know that these art sprays, once dry, are permanent, and I can continue to move wet media across the pages without fear of smudging or smearing or losing any detail. So I'm just working now on the left hand side to reflect that same design in the same color from the stencil. And these dry pretty quick. And you'll see I didn't take great care in making sure that the stencil was lying absolutely flat. We do have a little bit of run down in between, but I think that lends itself to the spray painted graffiti sort of look that I'm going for. So not only am I not upset, I'm actually really pleased with the look. These art sprays are great for getting drips You can, spray the color down and hit it with a mister, and you can totally get the drips and petals of color that some of us really, really like. And I will also put the colors and stencil numbers and manufacturer information, just like I've been doing across the screen, will also be in the video description as well. So now I am dipping a palette knife into some inexpensive white acrylic paint and going along from the outside edges of the top and bottom of the page, working back into the middle and just scraping a very thin amount along. This just adds another layer of texture and interest and gives us a little bit of white space back. And then you'll notice this will not be quite as apparent. You may be watching this and panicking like, what's she doing? But I promise you, in the end, it all comes together. We are just beating back some of the color, getting some white space in there, and it will also give us the chance to get the yellow-green, I think it's maybe called Reseda, the yellow-green art spray, some white to play off of to where it really shines. So we'll just do the white paint scraping across both pages. And again, this is a very thin amount. It's very easy to add more, but it's very hard to take it back off if you overdo it right out of the gate. Okay, so now I have a limited selection of art sprays, and I do not currently own any type of a pink or a fuchsia, and I really wanted to add a pink of some type into the page. So I'm going with a Liquitex Basics acrylic in Quinacridone Magenta, and I'm adding a larger version of that X just to repeat that in a different size throughout the page. That's the great thing with the Marabu art spray, is you can pair the spray with your acrylic paints and other mixed media supplies, and they're just going to work beautifully. So this particular stencil, again, is another favorite of mine. I love these big, graphic, bold, sort of tribal designs, and StencilGirl has a great selection of these types of stencils. So I'm just going to, I don't want to cover the red X's I put down the center, so I'm just moving my stencil over and applying more. And the really great thing about this paint is the opacity, and I will show you a close-up here in a bit, but the art spray design that we've already laid down is still peeking through that Liquitex Magenta paint, so we don't lose all of that texture and all of that design in the background. It just shines through that paint and really just starts blending everything together, so you can kind of see there what I mean. We still see that sort of Aboriginal design in the back. Looking great so far. Alright, so I have a little section of a stencil that I have taped off with just some painter's tape. And we'll go back to adding more art spray. And as I apply this, I go a little heavy. When I lift the stencil, it's bled a lot. My initial instinct is to try to wipe up that bottom part. But then as soon as I do that, I think to myself, what would happen if I just wiped it up? how much would come off. You can see that the paper really takes that spray. It is very permanent, but I liked what happened. I wiped it up and I got some really nice color, and I'm pleased with it. And we're not done layering, so that purple rectangular area in the upper left will really become part of the background, so we don't need to fret over that. And now I have just dipped a short bristled brush into water and then into white acrylic paint, and I'm going through and just adding some splatters. This is one of those things with taste. You can not add splatters, you can add a ton, you could do colored splatters. I like white because I like to break up some of those shapes with just some tiny little bits of white. I think the white space is important, although I do have a tendency to initially cover that background, usually with a yellow. Yellow is sort of my go-to beginning layer. But it's nice to add that white throughout here and there, even if it's the tiniest bits like splatters. And now I am ready to add my focal images, and this is a stencil design by Tina Walker. I am a huge fan of Tina's art, and she's also just a really nice person. This is a design of hers for StencilGirl, and this is my first time using it. I'm excited to finally get to use this stencil. I've been holding on to it for a few months now. And I'm just going over with a cosmetic sponge and some black acrylic paint. I'm being sure to go back in, and you'll see here, and add a black lip around, and then I am very quickly going in with a wet brush and smoothing it out, fanning it out, and then wiping down with a cloth. I don't want a harsh black line, but I do want the black to sort of come out like a shadow a little bit. You can kind of play around with that however you like, and then adding the larger of part of that stencil onto the right hand page and doing the same thing. We're going to get a little bit of black around the edge, and while it's still damp, go in with a wet brush and fan that out. So my word of the year is live. Each of the 10 artists that is working on the Marabu and StencilGirl Products collaboration is sharing their creation based upon their word of the year. If you'd like to see more of the collaboration, you can visit Marabu or StencilGirl Products on Instagram or Facebook and see what all of the other artists have been sharing. There is some amazing artwork that is being shared this month on social media. And you could also do an Instagram search for hashtag word of the year. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I hope even more than that you have found it useful and maybe you've learned something. If you haven't already, I would love to have you subscribe to my channel. It would mean so much to me. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, give it a like. And be sure to check back often for more content. Thank you so much for joining me. Until next time.